Good morning. We're going to try something new. I think there's many languages in the room, and I will have some questions to ask you. So the way to answer, when I do like that, if you agree, you say yes in your own language. Les Français, vous dites oui. Italiano, dite si. Schweizerdeutsch sagt ja, jo. Und Deutsche sagen ja. Can we try it? It has to be more, you need more energy, otherwise you'll fall asleep. Yeah, it's getting better. Thank you. I'm super thankful for the DevOps Days organizers for having me as this keynote speaker. Thank you for promoting diversity by accepting retired engineers as speakers, and also people from over the Röstigraben. I think I've both axes of diversity here. And it's last year was my first time at this conference. Actually, my first time at the DevOps Days conference, and I like the format very much. I like the vibe, single track, not too big, so you get to know people. Some people have asked me if I was going to play music in this talk, like I did last year. Unfortunately, I have not found a good excuse yet. I'm open to suggestions. Come to me after the talk. But I have new instruments. I started building percussion shakers that you can customize. So they're very nice, but don't have an excuse so far. My name is Bertrand Delacretaz. I'm a retired software engineer, allowed to put the retired thing in quotes because I would like to remain somewhat active, including speaking at conferences. So super happy to be here. And Dirk said the rest. So I was with Adobe for 19 years, Day Software and Adobe. Before that, I was independent for 18 years. And I've been quite active in open source, board of directors of the Apache Software Foundation for 14 terms. And now I retired early this year, and I remain active in various ways. So this talk is about ethics in engineering. Who thinks ethics is important in our industry? Good. And who thinks ethics is complicated? Yeah, you agree, right? So we agree, that's good. But we have to define what is ethics if we want to talk about ethics. The thing is, I'm a pragmatic person. I have not studied ethics formally, so maybe there's people in the room who know that much better than me. Please come to me after the talk, and if I say stupid things, I hope not. I'm going to approach this from a very pragmatic angle. And the idea is that after this talk, you have pointers to how to, integrate ethics better in your work in computer stuff. So this is a very general definition accepted from Wikipedia, evaluating the impact of our decisions based on moral duties, virtues, and consequences. Basically asking yourself when you have to make a decision, is it right or wrong? Or how can we make it right or wrong? And software is made of decisions. When you create software, there's thousands of decisions when you create a system. So it's important. But there are various views on ethics. And this is my very pragmatic view. Thinking about how I was working, especially when I was independent, single person company. And this was kind of my motto, to serve customers in a reliable, durable, and meaningful way, and cultivate a good relationship with them. If you can have happy customers who might become even friends, that's super nice, and that's a really, really nice way to make a living. I always wanted my work to be meaningful. When you are a consultant, it's also easy to make money on stuff that's useless but requires a lot of work. Then you can bill many hours to the customer, but they won't be able to do anything with that. That was not my angle. I always tried to do stuff that it's really, really meaningful. In researching that talk, I found a paper by some people from EPFL, Université de Neuchâtel, and other organizations about digital ethics. So how do ethics apply to the digital world? And this is extremely relevant for us, especially in the age of AI when things are moving really fast. And their definition is that digital ethics is integrating digital technology and human values in such a way that digital technology advances human values instead of damaging them. And we will see some examples that it's not always the case, and it's quite obvious. I mean, if I ask you for examples, I'm sure we'll get 5 to 10 examples in just a few minutes. And thinking about ethics and machinery is not new. Who has read Asimov? Yeah, great. It's one of my favorite science fiction authors, and this is one of my favorite books, Caves of Steel, where this policeman who finds out that he's actually working with a robot and has to trick the robot to find that it's actually a robot. It's very nice. But Asimov came up with the 3 laws of robotics, laws that applies to robots, and he made that in 1942. A robot should not harm humans. It should obey human orders, and it should protect itself so that it can remain useful for a long time. Food for thought in terms of AI. I'm not the only one thinking about ethics and engineering. This is an example from the ACM, the American Computer Machinery Association, and they have a very detailed code of ethics that you can find on the web. At the end of the presentation, I'll have a QR code. That's the only time in the presentation where you can get your phones out and take a picture of that QR code. And then you will have links to everything that I'm presenting here, so you don't need to even take picture of that. So there's lots of good things in this code of conduct. It would be too much to discuss it in these 45 minutes, so I'll leave it for you to have a look if you want. But it's really interesting. It's very detailed. In summary, this would be my definition for today of ethics in engineering: doing the right thing based on our moral principles. Do you agree it's a good definition? Yeah, working definition for today, right? That's enough. Basically, how can we create software that does the right thing? We have to define what's the right thing. And defining the right thing will be based on our values, and they can differ. I don't know where you come from. Not enough time to ask everybody, but I'm sure we come from different places. For my parents, it was very important when when you cross someone in the street, you say hi. Otherwise, you're very impolite. If you're in Winterthur and you're walking the street and you say hi to everybody, first you will get tired, and people will look strangely at you. You don't do that in a big city. Okay, Winterthur is not that big, but for me it's a big city. I live in a village. When I'm in my village, I go to the train station, there's people are waiting on a platform in the morning, and you cross and you say hi, because it's a small place and it's a village. So the values might vary based on your culture and the context, but it's good to have defined values. These are the company values from Adobe, where I worked for many years. I think they're good. They're really good, actually. But they are more inward-looking. There are more values for Adobe engineers who should create the future, own the outcome, raise the bar, be genuine. That's a really nice way. And the good thing when you have documented values like that is that you can refer to them. If you're not happy with how something's happening in your work, you can say, hey, we are not raising the bar. Or you're not owning the outcome. Owning the outcome is a very nice one. It means when something goes wrong, you don't tell the customer, it's not my fault. It is your fault, because you're part of the organization that's doing wrong things, so you have to fix it. That's really nice. But it's more like, inward-looking values. But they are very good. This is a different example from different industry. SNCF, the French train company, the group actually. And I like this definition of their purpose. Why does SNCF exist? To give people the freedom to move by connecting territories in a safe, solidaristic, and sustainable way. It's nice. It's not too long, it's precise, and you can really refer to it, and it can orient the company's strategy. It should. And again, it's good to have these values documented so people can decide if they agree with them or not, and maybe challenge them. Maybe you have worked in a company like this fictitious Bad People Inc., where the values are get in, get rich, get out, grab the money and run. Customers are stupid. I see that in a lot of organizations, where you think, no, it's for stupid customers anyway. You can feed them anything and they will give us money. And laws, why? Why would we care about laws? If you're in an organization like that, if you like it, you're not my friend, I would recommend that you just get out, get away, And sometimes it's subtle. Or work with the organization to get better values. That's also a positive way of working with this. I like to tell stories, so I'm going to tell a few stories in this talk. The first one, in 1988, I did a music school in Hollywood, California. And on the opposite side of the street, there was this $1 store. Everything is sold for $1. I needed scissors. So I go there and I buy scissors, pay $1. I'm happy, go back home and want to cut something. They don't work, And I look at the scissors. There's no way these scissors would cut anything. They were not meant for cutting. They were meant for selling. And the company who sold them to me was happy, I guess, because they said, oh yeah, we have this stupid guy from Switzerland. He bought the scissors. I have $1 more. And they don't work. I don't care. Yeah, I think it's an example of the values from the previous slides. And this happens. So that's what we want to... In software, it can be much more subtle, but you can see things like that, where software is created, it's not really useful. So the conclusion from this values section is that values must be documented. If you want your company to do ethical software, I think you need to agree on a set of values and document them in written form so people have the same information, the same idea on what they are. Because we are creating dangerous things sometimes in software. Sometimes we say, no, it's software. If a website doesn't work, it's not really dangerous. People might be unhappy, but it doesn't put them at risk. There are examples. Who knows the Terac 25 story? A few people. That's a sad story from a long time ago. Yeah, I was born. Maybe some people in the room were not born. But it's a story of a medical device which is meant to deliver radiation to people to heal them. The previous version of this machine had electromechanical interlocks to make it impossible to deliver too much radiation. Then they created Terac 25, and someone said, we can do everything in software. Software is great. Why do you need these electromechanical things? They are expensive. We can make more money if we move to software. And they moved to software-only control of this device. Problem is, you probably heard of a race condition. Who's ever heard of a race condition? Yeah, right? They had a race condition. And as the operators got more skilled, they were faster in pressing the keys. And if you press some keys in a given order too fast, the machine would get confused and deliver many times the dose of radiation that they should deliver to the patient. And several people died out of that, A terrible story, but it shows that, we have to sometimes just making more money is not a good idea. And this is, I think, a sad but good example of where ethics should have come into play. It's not uncommon to have dangerous tools. Who's got such a table saw at home? Yeah, a few of you. Show me your hands. Have all your fingers. I'm joking, but my father was a carpenter. And I don't know if you know this joke. It doesn't work today anymore, where the guy is ordering 5 beers for the carpenters, And in my family, there's many carpenters, and many of them had some parts of their fingers missing, because at the time it was common. Nowadays, it's much more rare, because we have learned to tame those tools. This is a super dangerous thing. You have this blade turning very fast, which is very sharp. It's very easy to hurt yourself. So when I have one at home, when I use it, I always think very well where I'm putting my hands, where I'm putting my body, so that if the part goes away, I'm not hit by it. We have learned to tame that. There's procedures, there's equipment that allows you to use a very dangerous tool, but very useful in a safe way. Software can be like that, so we have to be careful. And it's subtle. The smartphones. Maybe this woman has a very good reason to look at her phone, and maybe she does it quickly and then goes back to putting her attention on her kids. I'm very sad when I see parents at the playground scrolling like crazy and while their kids are playing and don't get any attention. And then I feel a bit bad about having helped create, internet websites and stuff, because they can be misused like that. There's a very real risk of addiction with smartphones, especially because some apps are badly designed or designed on purpose to get people addicted. That's very sad. And I think that's where we as engineers can play a role and say, this does not work. You know, I want our stuff to be ethical, and this includes not getting people addicted to what we create. AI, of course, AI chatbots also have lots of risks, and we'll see that when we go to the canvas analysis. And Claude's constitution, I think, is very interesting in this respect. Anthropic has written what they call the Claude Constitution, which is a very detailed set of values that Claude AI should respect so that their stuff is ethical. So we still, you know, this is still evolving quite fast. So we're still learning how to do this right. And I think what we'll see in this talk will help us, you know, get better in this respect. So we do need ethics, and they need to be based on shared values. We have to agree what our values are, even if we come from different cultures, different, you know, mother tongues, different organizations. We have to agree on this. So at this point, I think what's important is that we should define the values of our own organization and document them. Change is going fast nowadays. So as Dirk was saying, I have a more than 40 years career doing IT, computers, programming, and I've seen some changes in my career, but the ones that are happening now are really fast. This is a picture of my father, about same age as I'm now, and as I was saying, he was a carpenter. He learned carpentry probably around 1947. At that time, when you needed to, you know, to plane a piece of wood, it was with a hand plane. And it took a long time. It took maybe, I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours to get the piece of wood right. And then in 1993, my father and my brother, they were working together. They bought a computer-controlled wood machining center, which was quite innovative in 1993. But it was such a change. You know, going from 2 hours hand planing wood to putting it in a machine, programming some stuff, and 2 minutes after that, it's done. So he lived through very substantial changes in the way you do the work. And maybe he loved doing hand planing. But then in 1993, nobody will pay you, or it's very rare that someone will pay you to do hand planing. And it's similar with software. Maybe, you know, already today, it's harder to get people to pay for you to write code by hand, to write very good code. You know, say, maybe we can generate it. So big changes, but there's almost 50 years between the hand plane and the computer-controlled system. In our case, it's more like 2 years. So it's really fast, which means that we need to get our fundamentals right. I do some sailing as well. If you're on a boat and the weather looks like this, it's the fundamentals that will make the difference between surviving this storm or getting in trouble. You know, is your crew organization right? Do you know how to bring your sails down? Do you know which sails to bring down so your boat remains maneuverable? Really fundamentals. And I think it's very often in our industry that the fundamentals are key. So I think in this age of AI, getting our fundamentals right in terms of ethics will be helpful. A few examples where ethics play a role. I like very much the Infomaniac is a Swiss hosting and cloud services company. Their tagline is the ethical cloud, and they pay a lot of attention to being ethical. This is a very good example. Their new data center in Geneva, where they recuperate 100% of the energy and send it to the heat circuit of the city. So if you use, for example, Uria, their chatbot, you contribute to heating Geneva. It's much better than just sending the heat in the atmosphere. So I think that's a very good approach, and it has cost them something. Creating their data center was probably more expensive than it would be if you don't care about that. One story of me, when I was a consultant, one of the customers, I realized after some time, they will not invite me to sales talks anymore, because I was too honest. You know, they wanted to tell some things which were a bit on the side, and Bertrand, no, don't take Bertrand. That would not work. So sometimes being ethical can get in the way of your career, or you have to adjust your career so you can remain ethical. Sometimes someone that did that very well is Steve Wozniak, the other Steve from Apple. You know that Apple computer was created by two people, named more people, but two of them were called Steve. Steve Jobs, which is well known, and Steve Wozniak, which is a little less well known. But he has a very ethical approach to things. And he was saying my approach was to create super nice products to have happy customers. And then the other Steve Jobs wanted to sell a lot of them, which is good. It's a balance that you need. But I encourage you, if you're interested, to read this article on Steve Wozniak. Another story, when I was working for Day Software, we had a release of our CQ5 software. And one day before the release, we found a serious security bug in it. And we said, we don't want to release that. You know, from my ethical standpoint, I'm saying no. And I could have said, you know, I will leave this company if you release that, and be very, strict about it. It was not a good idea. And the trick was, the people from the product said, you know, we have big customers. They're slow. So they're not going to use that before a month. So in the meantime, we can release a version that's fixed. Because we have invested a lot of money in the marketing for this release date. So being strictly ethical and not releasing it would be a problem in terms of business. So for business sake, we release it, and then maybe in 3 days, we release a patch. So that's, sometimes you have to make reasonable compromises to get your ethical, your ethics and the business both working. Another story, who has worked with enterprise Java Beans yeah, if I ask who has been happy with that, there's probably 0 people. For me, this was a terrible thing. It was in the early 2000 years. It was very complicated. Typically the kind of thing where you would make a lot of money as a consultant to explain how it works, and you don't need this, but I don't care. I'm selling you the hours so that you're going to understand how it works. And I really sidestepped it. I said, no, that's, it's not meaningful for my customers. So I don't want to do that. And I didn't do it, and it was a good idea. Then when they came up with Enterprise Java Beans 3.0, it was completely different. It was actually inspired from Spring, which is much simpler. So they realized that, no, that stuff is too complicated, forget it. So I was happy that my ethical standpoint, in a way, saying I don't want to do useless stuff for my customers. I don't want to do stuff for my customers that's too complicated. So let's forget about it. But sometimes we are blind to the ethical aspects. And the research group that I was mentioning, it's a group from EPFL, University of Neuchâtel, and other organizations. They have come up with this digital ethics canvas. And there's a link to the paper in the links that I will provide, so you can see this. And their thing is, if we want to make our software ethical, let's define a canvas of questions to identify the risks that our software poses in terms of ethics in several areas. And they have very interesting concepts like ethical depth, compared to technical depth. Ethical blindness, where we don't see the ethical problems because we're too busy fixing the technical stuff or doing business. And the ethical lenses, which are the angles with which we look at this ethics thing. And this is the canvas with the 5 lenses. Welfare, fairness, we'll discuss them. User autonomy, privacy, sustainability. And then for each category, each lens, we identify risks in our software, and we define mitigations to avoid them. And I think for me, that's a very concrete thing that you can take from this talk, is how can we analyze our software to define if it's ethical or not. So let's look at these lenses based on our examples that we saw earlier. The first lens, it's not formally listed as a lens in their paper, but they mentioned that we should think about the benefits of our stuff. So the table saw has specific benefits. If you need it, it's super useful, but it's not for everybody. The phones, I think we all agree that smartphones have many benefits. The therapy radiation machine saves lives, so it has definite benefits. And the AI can have many benefits, even though it also has risks. So I think it's good. And in my story about Enterprise Java Beans 2.0, the benefits were very vague. So I think it's the first question to ask. Then the welfare is the angle, the lens is about, is what we're building, is it dangerous? And do we have mitigations? Are we protected? So the table saw is dangerous because you can get injured very clearly, but we have protections. We have processes and tools, and as I was saying, today it's rare for a carpenter to have missing fingers. In my father's times, it was very common. So we got much better over time. The phones can lead to addictions. Do we have mitigations? It's debatable. I think we're not there yet. The radiation therapy machine can lead to death, but nowadays I haven't heard of any accidents recently. It's gotten better. We have learned to use this technology in a safe way. And the AI can clearly lead to confusion. We know that AI can give you bad recommendations that you need to interpret and decide if you use them or not. We are getting there. We have working, or the companies who are doing AI tools are working on that, but I don't think we're there yet. It's still ongoing. So I think the good thing is that we show that this canvas exposes the risks, and it helps us find what are the ethical risks in the software that we are building. In terms of fairness, the question is our system and software accessible or biased? Okay, table saw is not a problem. They just need to buy one. The phones can lead to digital divide. Like people who are even older than me or younger, but with difficulty understanding these things, can be like when people need to buy a train ticket. Maybe it's hard for them because you have to do it via an app. So we have to be careful about that. It's not, it's not totally a problem or not. It's subtle, but it can happen. The therapy machine can have a problem because it's expensive, and the AI tools, the chatbots, can be biased. We know that. They might see things from an angle that's not really, really good. So with the canvas, we can identify the risks in these different categories. I don't want to give all the details, but the autonomy angle is, can users understand? Can users make choices? And in the phones, with the monopolistic companies driving the services, if you want to have a phone that has no trace of Google or Apple, it's hard. You can do it, but it needs a lot of effort, and general public generally can do that. So I think if we want to analyze the smartphones from this angle of autonomy, it's not fantastic. It could be better. And when we do systems, it's questions that we have to ask. Privacy, I think that's one area where we're doing relatively good. With regulations like European GDPR, we have to be careful about websites to respect privacy, expose what data we collect. So that's maybe the one angle where we're doing pretty good. But if you're doing your own system, you have to think about this. And sustainability is also one area where it's debatable how good we are doing. Okay, the table saw is not a problem, but you could imagine a table saw where the company that sells it sells you blades that you cannot, sharpen, that you have to throw away and buy a new blade when it's over. In some industries, you see that, the parts that you could really repair in theory, but the company makes it so that you can't repair them and you have to buy more of them. That would not be good. In the phones, the recycling can be a problem. In the medical machine, if it's radioactive, does it generate waste? You have to take care of it. And in the AI world, the problem is clearly, or the risk is clearly the energy that it's using. Is it reasonable? Can we do better? Can we come up with an AI model that uses 10 times less energy? That would be good. So I think for me, I found this canvas to be a very good tool because it exposes the risks of our software. So the idea is that when you're designing a new system or a new piece of software, you use this Canva to say, does it have benefits? Can it pose a risk to welfare? Can it pose a risk to fairness, to privacy, and so on? So I think it's a really good tool. Of course, you could adjust it. Maybe you see other angles in your industry that make sense, and you could add them. But I think just the idea of using such a canvas is very powerful. And this paper, I think, exposes it very nicely. So I encourage you to read it if you're interested. Again, you will get the links. I'm doing good on timing. You know, the small secret, these small numbers at the bottom of my slides is the timing. So this should be 34 minutes, and I should have 11 minutes left, and I have 10:15. So I'm just 45 seconds late. That's not too bad. And I don't even tell you what the section is. This is about influencing or walking away. You know, if you care about creating ethical systems, you would want to influence your organization to go in this direction. And at some point, you might have to decide to walk away. You know, the bad guys corp values, grab the money and run. At some point, if you realize that your company or organization is like that, it's probably better to leave. But you would want to, if you like what you're doing, you would try to influence them to go in the right direction. This is a book that I can recommend about that. If you're doing a fantastic job, people will listen to you more. So for me, that's a starting point. You know, maybe they say, okay, Bertrand is annoying with his things about ethics. Who cares about that? But he's doing a good job, so we're not firing them. You know, like this customer that was not taking me for sales talks anymore, maybe they had this discussion. You know, I don't want Bertrand in a sales talk anymore because he's honest. But he's doing a good job, so we still work with him. So that would be my first recommendation. Do a great job, and then it will give you venues to talk to your organization and try to influence them. To influence your organization, you have to choose your allies. If you wanted to do a rock band in your organization, you would choose people who play music and who like music. Same thing. If you want to be, if you want to drive ethics in your company, find people who are, interested in that and form a group with them. And maybe you call yourself the Ethics Guild or whatever. And this will give you much more power in the company. If it's a few people talking rather than just one person, I think this can really help. It's also really good to find business reasons. You know, the goal of a company, it shouldn't be just to make money. It should be to make money so that you can employ people and they get money so that they can have a living and a home and a family and so on. But the company needs to make money to survive. So if you can relate your ethics considerations to business reasons, it's much easier to get them accepted. And often it's a good thing. Like Infomaniac, this company who says we are the ethical cloud, they're doing quite well. They're not exploding like some of these startups that grow 10,000% in a year, but they've been consistently, employing people and having a good business and being a reference for ethical teams. So I think, if you can find good relationship to business, that's the best thing. And then if you have documented values, you can go back to them. Who remembers "Don't be evil"? Yeah, that was Google's motto a few years ago. It's changed a bit in the meantime, or I don't know. But if you have this, even if you had a vague values definition like that, you could say, what we're doing here, I think that's evil, so we need to change it. So going back to the values and promoting the documentation of the values in your company is very good. And if the values don't match, that's when you go away. You know, if you have tried to get the values documented and doesn't work, or do you have a values document that you can't agree with, then it's time to leave and find some place where you can be happy. And, be happy and create ethical things for society. Because I'm a musician, that's an excuse. That's where I can play my music, right? It's not as fun as the kazoo, right? It's fun still. Because I'm a musician, my conclusion is called coda, and I have a pre-coda. I'm also a cyclist. This is my main transportation. Actually, mine is even better than this one, but it's one of these very nice Tour de Suisse bikes, semi-customized bikes that you can buy in the Kreuzlingen, I think. Why am I showing this to you? Because I think there's a strong parallel between being ethical and having happy customers. Generally, if you're very ethical, your customers will be happy because you will be delivering good products that will last a long time, that they can use for a long time. And it's really like that with this bike. When I got this bike, it was better than I imagined. I started riding, oh, wow. And you're doing 55 kilometers an hour going downhill and you're scratching your nose because it's so stable, don't feel in danger. It's really great. Good brakes, the 4-piston brakes like you have on the downhill bikes. Supernova front light. My wife complains when I'm in the next village and I'm going home. She says, "Can you turn off this light? It's blinding me in the room." It's really nice and better than you imagined. That's usually the mark of a good craftsperson. You get someone do a job in your house, fix the kitchen, and they do it. Oh wow! And you did this as well. Just one level higher than you imagined. That's really good sign of some ethical organization. The thing is, so mine has a belt drive instead of a chain, and it has electronic gear shifting, hydraulic brakes. There's nothing to wear out. There's almost no maintenance. You change the tires, the brake pads, and that's it. And so it means you sell this bike and you never see this person again because their bike works perfectly and they use it for 10 years or 20 years. That takes guts from a company business point of view. Some companies would say, no, we need to sell bikes that wear out after 2 years. So Bertrand comes back and buys another one. And that's clearly not the philosophy here. And I think it's really nice, but takes some courage. So the actual coda, the actual conclusion. I think hopefully by now we agree that we need ethics based on shared values. A bit weak, right? More people agree? Oh, thank you. Thanks. And then it's good to have mechanisms to influence your organization. So hopefully my examples, my pointers help you here. And I think this canvas is really useful because of the lenses, the axes that it shows to analyze your projects in terms of ethics. So I encourage you to read the paper if you're interested. Now, it's a time where you can get your phone out and take a picture of this QR code. That's a page on my blog where you have all the links to everything that was presented in this talk. So, yeah, good. 3 minutes, we have 3 minutes 24, or maybe 8 minutes 24 if the 5 minutes for questions. Anyway, we have some time for questions, I think. Thank you very much.